Good day everyone, I am one of the reporters of Chapter 10. I am Panunshalman Mitchi. Now we will go to discuss these two topics about characteristics of persons with hearing impairment and identification and assessment of children with hearing impairment. But first, let us know what impairment is. According to Merriam-Webster, it is diminishment or loss of function or ability. We can recognize a person who has impairment in mental, eyes, hearing, or any difficulties about. But now, let us focus to hearing impairment. Characteristics of persons with hearing impairment. So we have what we called deafness. It is a condition of lacking the power of hearing or having impaired hearing. It is also described as an invisible handicapping condition. Handicapping, it seems a hindrance. If you are having a hearing impairment, it might grant this as a disadvantage of any speech acquisition. So we have 12 characteristics of a child or person with hearing impairment. Cups hand behind the ear or cocks ear, tilt head at an angle to catch sounds. Has stained or blank facial expression when listening or talked to. Pays attention to vibration and vibrating objects. Moves closer to speaker, watches face, especially the mouth and the lips of the speaker when talked to. Less responsive to noise, voice, music, and other sources of sounds. Uses more natural gestures, signs, and movements to express self. Shows marked imitativeness of work and play. Often fails to respond to oral questions. Often asks for repetition of questions and statements. Often unable to follow oral directions and instructions. Has difficulty as associating concrete with abstract ideas. And has poor general learning performance. As mentioned earlier, it is hard to have a hearing impairment because it might serve this as a hindrance to acquire knowledge. Having a hearing impairment may affect the development of speech and the acquisition of language skills. The more severe the hearing loss is, the more difficult it is to acquire skills in listening, speech and communication, reading, and writing. Typically, speech is difficult, unintelligible, unpleasant, and difficult to understand. Vocabulary is limited due to articulation issues such as omission, addition, and substitution of letters and sounds, as well as word distortion. Learning other school subjects becomes more difficult as a result of poor reading ability. According to studies, students with hearing impairment perform 3 to 4 years behind their hearing peers in terms of educational achievement. Appropriate special education curriculum, instructional strategies, and support services aid in the reduction of lags in the acquisition of skills in the basic elementary curriculum. Children with hearing loss go through the same stages of socio-emotional development. However, children with hearing impairments have a lack of communication skills. The situation forces people with hearing impairments to stay in each other's company, giving rise to a culture of deafness. As the children grow older, the demand for the use of speech grows and catching up becomes nearly impossible, further isolating them from mainstream society. Incorporating socialization activities into the curriculum and including deaf children in regular classes expand opportunities for socio-emotional development. Similarly, hearing students learn to accept those with hearing loss as peers. Now, let us proceed to identification and assessment of children with hearing impairment. Here, we will find out now if the child is deaf. First is audiological evaluation. So, we have what we call audiology is the science of testing and evaluating hearing ability to detect and describe hearing impairments. Audiological evaluation is done by audiologists through the use of sophisticated instruments and techniques. Audiometer is an electronic device that generates sounds at different levels of intensity and frequency. The purpose of audiological evaluation is to determine frequencies of sounds that a particular person hears. Pure tone audiometry utilizes pure tones in air and bone conduction test, which yield quantitative as well as qualitative description of child's hearing loss. Another audiometric test is speech audiometry, which uses speech instead of pure tones. Here, the person's detection of speech at the minimum audible level is measured. The understanding of speech sound and the ability to discriminate different speech sounds under sufficient loudness are also determined. There are alternative audiometric techniques for hearing evaluation, such as sound field audiometry, evoke response audiometry, impedance audiometry, play audiometry, operant conditioning audiometry, and behavior observation audiometry. In the Philippines, where formal audiological services are limited, informal tests of hearing are employed. Informal hearing tests are the following: whispering test, conversational live voice test, and ballpen click test. Number 2, cognitive assessment. The assessment tools that measured intellectual capacity of children with hearing impairment do not rely primarily on verbal abilities. In the United States, the HSKI test of learning aptitude, the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, and the Stanford Achievement Test are widely used because of the nonverbal performance test. And then number 3 is assessment of communication abilities. Assessment of speech and language abilities includes as analysis of the development of the form, content, and use of language. Articulation, pitch, frequency, and quality of voice are examined. Number 4, social and behavioral assessment. Hearing impairment brings about significant effects on social, emotional, and personality development as a result of their restrictions in interactive experiences and communication activities with their age group. Linguistics difficulties oftentimes show in low self-concept and social-emotional maladjustment. So that would be all. Thank you, and Miss Lovely Perez is the next reporter. Thank you.